This podcast may contain views and opinions which are those of the hosts and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any local agency, organization, union, employee, or company, including the podcast.
Welcome back, George.
What's up?
Welcome back, my union beings. Thank you guys for tuning in every week. We appreciate you. Say we're excited for the guest, our return guest this week, Jake the Knight. Sorry, we call you Jake the Knight. So
no, that's fine. That's fine. I don't think anybody even knows what it is at this point. So that's totally fine. But yes, I have returned.
But so how are things? Obviously, we've suffered a loss of a battle. Let's call it that.
That's true.
I don't think we're losing the war, but
not overall. Yeah, but this battleground is done. We've officially lost. We are out of the castle, or decertified. Well, not even really decertified. I mean, the union voluntarily pulled out technically.
Okay.
But I mean, there was nothing else to do. You know,
Yeah.
we had a long conversation with them where it was like, it's really funny. Like the end of last year, I basically gave them an ultimatum, and I was like, you need to tell me if you're in this to win it. You know what I'm saying? Because then I'll stay in it. We'll be fine. And within 3 months after that, it was like, I was on the phone being like, you guys don't need to be here anymore. You know, and it was a long conversation. They had, you know, hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars spent in legal fees and stuff fighting this for us. And at some point, with nothing in return, right? We weren't paying dues, nothing.
Yeah.
So they're just bleeding money. And we took some very key losses, like over the past, from like the start of the year to, you know, like early March or something like that. So a few weeks ago. And then that was it, right? Once we had those losses, it was done.
So explain, like, what do you mean losses? Like what?
Well, we had like,
if you can.
No, I totally can. So I outlined like a couple of like what I saw like paths to victory, right? You know, there was like, could we outlast them? You know, could we just make this keep going until they finally give up? And the answer to that question was no. Very, very quickly, it was like no.
We talked about that a little bit. Not enough disruption.
Yeah, there's not enough disruption. As much as they were spending, you know, because I thought maybe financially, you know, they'd be at some point they'd be like, we don't want to spend this much money, but they just didn't care. Like when pride is involved, and when your pride is more important than any sort of like financial obligation you have, you can't beat that, right? Yeah. Or like you can't beat it by just outlasting them. You have to like win. So that already put like an extra stress on the whole situation. So that wasn't going to happen. I had thought that maybe with all of the things that they were doing that were like illegal, and how they were acting and stuff, that maybe we could get the NLRB to like assign like a mediator or something, and we could get them involved, and then there could be like a real progress and change. That was very clearly not going to work. I mean, I would say that a large reason that we lost in the first place is that the NLRB was short-staffed, slow, you know,
Which they have been for a long time.
You know, not focused on us, which is completely understandable. I'm not necessarily blaming them, but it's like both simultaneously their fault, partly their fault that we lost, and also not really their fault because of the situation that they're in. So it's just a tough one all around. Obviously, the people were pretty involved in trying to be very helpful. With the exception of like a few, there's like the regional director or something like that for like our region in Southern California is like not the most helpful person, you know? And I don't know him personally, so I don't know that.
Why do you think that was? Just the amount of people that were trying to be organized? It was just a smaller group? Like
maybe. I mean, it could be that there's like 100 fights going on at 100 different locations, right? Yeah. We're just not the most important one at the moment. It's hard. Also, ours is like really hard to like show you instantly. I can't just give you a card and be like, this is everything you need to know about like what's going on in medieval times. Like there's a lot of nuance and it takes a lot of like explanation and stuff. So I think that didn't help, you know. I can't just point to like one thing and be like, hey, you know, we're not getting paid enough. That's it. You know what I'm saying? You know, because then there's like this whole question of like, what do you do? You know, like, is your job like a stunt job? Is it a performance job? Like, people don't even know what medieval times is. People have never been there before, right? Yeah. So there's like a lot of like stuff that goes into having to explain exactly what the issues are. And you know, realistically, pay was only like a small portion. What was a large portion? You know, it's like a 30 or 40% of what we were fighting for, but it's still like there's a huge section of things that were not being taken care of. So the NLRB just was ill-equipped, right? I mean, they're just ill-equipped. And so with how slow they were on things, with how inefficient they are at like handing out punishments, like we totally won our ULP and argument and stuff about them interfering with our election. So, I mean, it was 100% investigated and found truthful and proven that they illegally interfered with our unionizing activity.
Wow.
Up into the vote and everything like that. And the remedy for that was an NLRB agent came out twice and just read sections of the NLRA out to us in a big area. Everybody had to come, and then she just like read out that you have rights and that nobody can like infringe on your rights to organize.
And that was it.
And that was it.
What was given to the company? I mean,
that was it.
Just a slap on the wrist.
That was the slap on the wrist.
Rights. That was it.
That was it. Yep.
That's bullshit.
There is no, and I mean, even if they had any sort of like, we've talked about this before, but even if you had any sort of like fine, the fines are still stuck for like what they would have been 50 years ago or 60, 70 years ago or something like that, right? So, so a fine back then would have been like a lot of money maybe. Now it's like a drop in the bucket. I mean, we're fighting against... Yeah, I mean, it's something. We're fighting against companies that have millions upon millions of dollars or hundreds of millions or billions, depending on what fight you're involved in, right? If you're an Amazon worker or something like that, I mean, you're fighting one of the largest companies on the planet.
Probably
right?
trillion.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. If you're trying to unionize an Apple store or something like that, I mean, like you're just... the uphill battle is like even way harder than what I was dealing with. Like I've always said that we were lucky in the sense that we were fighting a big company, but it was still smaller in scale than like fighting Starbucks or Amazon or UPS or whatever the situation is that just is like so massive across the states. But where on the flip side though, ours was like really personal, right? Like, I don't think Jeff Bezos, I mean, I know for a fact Jeff Bezos doesn't care about his workers, right? Like, I know for a fact he doesn't care. I don't think he thinks about them. Like, that's how, I think it's just like numbers on a spreadsheet, and he's just trying to balance.
That's what it is.
He's just balancing numbers on a spreadsheet. And there's an element of like, I can understand that, and I'm okay with fighting that, as opposed to you actively hating me and thinking that I like I'm sure that I've been put on somebody's hit list somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it feels like, is that there was... it would not surprise me if it came out that there was a discussion behind closed doors to be like, hey, if we just got rid of this guy, like, would it be, would everything go, better? And that's what made our fight so bad, right? It was like that personal nature. We've talked about that before. So, yeah, I mean, I would say that the uphill battle against the company and the NLRB not helping was that path was no longer viable. So the only option that we had left, at least in my mind, was seeing if we could like legislate a contract through the city council. So if we could pull Bonaparte together to legislate like minimum wage ordinances or
something,
animal safety and stuff like that. And we had a couple of things in the pipeline, and finally, how government bureaucracy just takes so long. So finally, after clearing through some red tape and stuff, we were, I was at a city council meeting where I was like fairly certain that we had 3 of the 5 people that we needed to like push some stuff through. And at the last second, one of the dudes folded on the city council, and was apparently causing like a whole bunch of issues and a whole bunch of drama behind the scenes, and I basically just tanked any shot we had of pushing anything through on the local government side. Now the current mayor, Mayor Sue, and Connor Trout that work there. I mean, those 2 people were instrumental in like writing and helping us try to push something through. But there's only, 2 out of 5 is not a majority, right? Yeah. So we needed more than them, and the person that we were relying on just completely just didn't do what he needed to do. And I don't know what the reason was. I'm sure there's some sort of like ulterior political motive that's very selfish and very like trying to further his own career. But it basically, like, I was there, and like we were filming it actually, because we saw this documentary that's being made about us that was coming out, and I think I went from like, okay, I don't want to be here, this is kind of boring, but like I need to be here too. Oh, I just witnessed this, like the final nail in the coffin. Like it literally felt like that. It literally felt like the hammer came down, and I was like, oh, okay, we're done. And I sent some emails like a few days later, or the next day, And that was when we had those hard conversations with AGVA to be like, hey, like this is everything that I've been telling you about, like our paths to victory, all of them are gone. So I no longer can see a way that we win. If anybody else has any ideas, let me know. And nobody else had anything. Yeah. And so it was like, all right, well then why are we even doing this anymore?
And I'm just curious, I know you said that they spent a lot of money and they, were helping you in some legal battles, but what exactly did AGVA do? And as far as not just the legal battles, the paperwork, but boots on the ground, that kind of thing, how instrumental were they in?
In regards to that aspect, they weren't helpful at all. I mean, AGVA, the entire AGVA office is staffed by like 12 people or something like that. And wow. Like only one person, 2 people are local in California, and they're both in LA one's I think closer to here, but one's in LA dealing with Universal, and one's here dealing with Disney. And if your primary focuses are Universal and Disney, you really can't get away from that, right? Like, yeah. So as much as they could possibly help, they would send help. They don't have anybody. Right. And so to answer your question is they weren't helpful in that aspect. Like it was just us and like primarily me and Aaron handling everything. I mean, that's why I said like, I think before we started, one of you guys had asked me about if I was looking at other jobs and stuff. And I had said that I had talked to some unions about potentially going to work for them. And it wasn't going to work out for me because this is the past 2 years, I've been in charge of everything. I mean, there has not been a single decision made that I wasn't a part of, or at least ask what my opinion was on it. And my opinion was weighted very heavily in that. And I know that's like a little bit arrogant and selfish to be like, I didn't want to lose that. But to then go to the flip side where I would end up working for an organization and I would have no say in anything that was going on, it would be like nightmare fuel for me. It would be like, I don't think I would butt heads probably with everybody just because I've got very distinct ideas. Not that I'm like incapable of learning or adapting or modifying or whatever I need to do, but I have ideas about how we should win, like as a labor movement from going forward. And a lot of the ways that unions, and we've talked about this before, you guys know, a lot of the ways that unions are run these days is also slow, not like forward thinking. There's not progress. It's a little bit antiquated in a lot of ways. And the last thing that some of these organizations want is some hothead coming in and just yelling at everybody. So but I mean, that's just what I've been doing for the past 2 years. I mean, I've been at the head of the table for a bit now. Clearly, I'm 0-1, right? So I'm not saying that I'm perfect or that I have like all this kind of stuff.
Just another perspective on it. Do you think maybe you could gain some knowledge from people that have been doing it for a while that, have laid out plans? Like I know for our organizers, right? If you're just a ground level organizer or even a volunteer organizer, the plans are made above your head, get it, you execute. But if you see, a list of results or a list of accomplishments at that point, do you feel like you'd be willing to give some of that up where you're like, okay, I get it. We have a plan. It works.
It does work.
You know what I mean?
No doubt. Yeah. And I think, look, I mean, as much as I joke about not being in charge and stuff like that, I mean, for me, it's like, I'm in my mid 30s and starting over at the ground level of a different organization and then basically like working my way up through as like a career path just isn't in the cards for me. I don't think. Like 10 years ago, if I'd been in the same position, I'd have been like, perfect. I'll go work for a union. I'll work my way up through the ranks and that'll be my job. That'll be my career. Yeah. But I think, I mean, I've dealt with like a lot of like personal stuff too, like through the entire like 2-year fight to the point where I'm just kind of ready to relax a little bit. And obviously it's not like I'm retiring, right? Like I didn't just like go one and done.
You can retire right now.
I was gonna say, dude, I was fixing to say like it makes it sound like I'm like, yeah, like, whew, man, like I've worked for so long. Somebody out there is gonna listen to this and be like, you have no idea what work is. Like, you're probably right, but yeah. So for me, it's just like there's other things that I want to try to do personally, like on the creative side of things, like look at different avenues for stuff. And I have the availability to do it right now. Like we got really, really, really fortunate. Like my partner's doing financially really well. Awesome. So for like me personally, this couldn't have ended at a better time, right? Because it's like I lost my job, everything went to complete and total like hell in a handbasket, and like at the same time, my partner started doing really well. And so it like balanced out to where we have like a nice, like calm, cohesive, like life now, like everything's going pretty well. And so from that aspect, it's like, I'm very thankful. And I'm going to use the time to try to come up with something, I think, interesting and entertaining for me to do. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that would be envious of being in the position that I'm in right now. And I'm going to try to use that and capitalize on, again, having the free time and availability to like anything that you've ever thought about doing, but you're like, I don't have time to do that right now. Right. Or any like hobby that you want to pursue or something like that. You know, that's kind of what I'm going to put my focus on right now. And
just for our viewers that may not have seen your other previous episodes, let's run through just real quick a timeline of what exactly happened, when did it start, how did it go, all that good stuff. So
this is actually the one thing that I'm like unbelievably excited about with the fact that we have an official, like fully budgeted and produced like documentary that's going to be made about the whole thing. So it's going to be out it's not going to be out for a while, right? It'll probably won't be finished until the end of the year. And I mean, like filming wise, I'm sure they're going to come back and do some like interviews and stuff. And then next year they'll do editing and stuff.
So they're not even in post yet.
They're not even in post, right? I still have like, they're out of town for a bit right now. I think one of the guys was like having a baby. And then when they come back, I'll have to sit down and do like a 4 or 5 hour interview, right? And like explain everything from the get go. And they've got notes tracking it. Oh yeah. Yeah. And they've got like, you know, the guy that I work with like really closely has like, you know, a Bible almost, right? Like a study Bible of like everything that I've ever said to him. You know, it's like not like real, like not for real, but like that's what it feels like. And so, you know, he'll be flipping through notes and like asking me questions, but this will be great because then it'll be like, if anybody like, you know, if anybody ever cares, like in the future, I could just be like, hey man, just tune into Apple TV and like watch the, watch the documentary. It probably gives you a pretty good overview. But yeah, to answer your question, so I worked at Medieval Times in Buena Park for about 2 years, and a year or more of that, at least while I was working there, and then more afterwards when I got let go, I unionized, or I was trying to unionize the place. And that started in June or July of like 2022 or something like that. So we were fighting for better pay. We didn't get paid very much. I only got paid $18.50 an hour to jump off horses and do stunt work.
So wild.
Yeah, and then there was some issues with pretty rampant animal abuse with the horses there that we were trying to fix. There was some issues with like interpersonal like relationships and stuff in the way that they sort of ran the company. I mean, there's been a lot of issues with like sexual assault and different things like that. There's just a safety element just from your coworkers that needs to be addressed there.
And the attendees, correct?
So, and the attendees. I mean, there's just, you know, I mean, a laundry list of things when it comes to safety, pay, just how the entire organization is structured from the get-go. And that's, you know, we were trying to change all of that in one go, right? And that might have been maybe, in hindsight, that might have been the problem, right? Is that we just cast a wide net and we were like going to try to fix everything. Yeah. And over the past, you know, year and a half or year and almost 2 years, basically, we've just been like systematically beat down. I mean, like no room at the bargaining or no progress at the bargaining table. Company just, you know, illegally doing a bunch of different things with no repercussions. Us not having the funds or the personnel to be able to fight back, and you know, the different paths of victory that we talked about that all sort of basically closed down one after another. It just kind of ended up with us being where we are now, which is there is no union. There is no union in any part of Medieval Times, even the New Jersey one's out.
I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So they decertified?
The same exact thing. It's not a technical decertification. It was basically walking away. But essentially, yeah. Like there wasn't like a vote and then, you know, the union got like voted out and decertified and all that kind of stuff. The union has officially chosen to walk away, but if you know about what was going on behind the scenes, there was nothing left for them to do. So there would, you know, even if they stayed until they got decertified or even if they stayed until we lost a vote again, it would have been pointless. That would have just been spending more money for no reason. In regards to their decision to like walk away, I'm 100% in agreement of it. I think that was the smart move, the right thing to do. The writing was on the wall. There was
even
just no shot.
The New Jersey scenario, because I know theirs was different. They weren't
New Jersey was
striking, correct?
Correct. New Jersey had less of a chance than we did, right? So the moment it was over for us, it was over for them. It was over for them probably even long before that. And we were still trying to hold everything together. Yeah. And then once we were out, it was over and done with. But there is no union in Medieval Times. I think I said before we started or at the beginning that I think that this will probably kill unionizing efforts at the company for a decade, probably. They've come in since then, since the official announcement, they've come in and they have given out raises.
Did they not give raises the whole time?
Not the entire time. No. And so this is the one part of frustration is sort of like, in retirement as I am, the one thing that really, really, really still absolutely fucking pisses me off is that nobody that currently works there that fought against the union will understand how stupid that is, that the day after the union or a few days or weeks after or whatever, the union walked away, that they finally gave you raises. They could have done that at any time over the past 2 years.
But I think, and just thinking about it in strategy, I mean, you talked earlier, or maybe off camera, about, this is the way you would probably done it if you were the company.
Yes.
Just thinking about it strategy-wise, I mean, to them it's like, see, the union was holding up your raises.
Yeah, which I guess that's the part that annoys me so much. All you have to do is Google it, right? Like, all you have to do is Google, can I get raises during like union negotiations or something like that, right? And it'll come up and like the first couple of things will tell you like, absolutely, yes, you can. So if I were still working there right now, the one thing that I would be pissed off about is that it took you 2 years. It took you 2 years and you didn't even give us close to the raise that we needed, Yeah. I mean, they're still completely underpaying certain people. Some people got fat raises.
Really?
Right? And it was all of the people that were instrumental in shutting us down from the inside, right? All the people that spread rumors or the people that remain loyal and stuff. Yeah. So it's
Union
like,
busters,
dude, it is so obvious to anybody that has a more than a single brain cell, like what happened and who got paid off and who didn't get paid off and who's getting prioritized and who's not getting prioritized. Yeah. And the fact that they're just giving you like a small raise, right? They're just throwing a little bit of money, just enough to be like, you're not going to be upset about this. You'll be fine, but not enough for it to actually make any sort of substantial difference, and then they're not going to deal with any of the other issues, right? So nothing else will change. So they've put a small Band-Aid on it. They've rewarded the people that stayed loyal to them, and everybody else gets shafted. And yet all of those other people are too unaware to realize that that's happening. So somebody somewhere right now is like, see, told you, like, we just didn't need the union. If the union hadn't been here, we would have gotten paid. Yeah. And that part pisses me off. But I mean, we've talked about it before, even on this show, that there's a severe lack of education in regards to how unions work, how the labor movement works,
benefits.
Even people that are in unions, right? You guys, we've talked before, you've talked to some of your members that it's like, you have no idea what's going on and you're in a union and you're benefiting from it and you still don't know what's going on. That is really why we lost. And that is why I feel like, in my personal opinion, that is why I feel like the majority of fights, or not the majority, but why a lot of fights lose, is that people just don't understand. And you're getting one side. It's like he said, she said, right? And instead of anybody taking the time to like educate themselves on like who's right or who's telling the truth, you just pick a side and just hope that you land on the right one. It's the
fog of war, you know what I mean? The company will put out disinformation, whatever you want to call it, propaganda, if you will, and you're trying to spread real information and trying to educate people. But that's a tactic that companies utilize all the time. And then they have, they can hold meetings at work and you're asking people to volunteer almost their own time to get educated, and not knowing it's a benefit for them. It's tough because it's an uphill battle. We've been a part of enough fights to know, that it just, you don't win them all for sure. And it definitely takes some strategy and knowing your enemy. And I think at the end of the day, it's a battle lost, but we're still fighting.
Yeah.
And I mean the movement in general.
Yeah.
Just like you said, you wouldn't be opposed to being an organizer if the right situation came about, right?
Yeah, and maybe later down the road when I've relaxed a little bit, more. Because the wound is still relatively fresh. As much as I'm like sort of over it, and I've been over it for a few months now. I mean, I still like, not like really, but like metaphorically, it's like you wake up in a cold sweat, right? Like and you're just like, so I'll be at the gym and I'll realize that I've been at the gym for like an hour and a half doing the same exercise, right? Because I'm just sitting there like thinking about like, just, you know, if I would have done this, or if I would have done that, or if I had just punched that dude, you know, a year and a half ago, like at least it wouldn't have helped, but it would have felt good. And then, you know, like that kind of stuff is what you think about, you know. And the thing is that as much as I give medieval times shit for being stupid, like they're run by idiots, which I wholeheartedly stand by, and I hope that they see this. It's a company run by morons. Yeah. They did make some very, very good and powerful strategical moves. And one of them, in my opinion, and I don't mean to be arrogant by saying this, but one of them is, I mean, they came after me so hard. That's part of the reason why I don't do this anymore. I mean, like, you know, with my partner getting like online abuse for like over a year, with the fracturing of the actual group of people that were organizing. I mean, I don't talk to anybody anymore, and a vast majority of them, I think, are really upset with me.
Really?
Yeah, really upset with me, and blame me for a number of the reasons for why we like failed and stuff. So I think they did a really, really, really good job of fracturing the group and isolating me, and then coming after me with like a bunch of like really shady, like underhanded tactics, like coming after my family and stuff like that. For sure. To the point where now it's like, you know, if I ever wanted to get involved in a fight again, the first question on my mind I have to think is this worth it for me to get my family involved, right? And there's like, in like going to organize, you know, if like for UPS or something like that, or the Teamsters, that wouldn't be as big of a deal, right? You know what I'm saying? Like your entry level organizers are not, you know, UPS isn't coming down on their families or whatever, you know, like, or at least I hope not. I pray that they're not.
You'd be surprised. You honestly would. UPS definitely has a team that goes over social media, that does digging. The bigger companies just, it's in a grander scale,
right?
You know,
right.
And where I think with you and with just the size of this, you were the focal point. You know, you and maybe Aaron, right? You guys were the focal point, and it's kind of easy to hit the nail, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is what
over
it is.
And over and over again, right? like literally, like I literally feel like I got punched in the face like repeatedly for a long time. I told somebody, the documentary guys asked me something about what it was like, and I was using the like metaphor or the analogy. It was like I feel like we've been in a boxing ring for 2 years, and we haven't thrown a single punch. We've just stood there and taken it. And like, I'm really proud of the fact that we like basically held in for as long as we did. You know, we didn't tap out early. We just sit there, just took punches over and over and over again, and kept coming and kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And then you just got knocked out, right? And then there's just no more, right? Now you're just sort of, you know, on the mat, and there's nothing left to do at this point. The count's over, you're done, the bout's over, and you have to kind of pull the pieces together and recover. But you're right, yeah. So there's no doubt that companies will definitely come after your family, and use that and stuff. And with me being the focal point on this one, I have to really seriously consider that moving forward, if that's worth it.
Yeah.
In a lot of aspects, it's not, right. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I know logically, as helpful as I could be, I can't by myself change the world, right? So it's not like, as much as I would love to, I tell my girlfriend this all the time, and she totally laughs at me and makes fun of me for being a nerd. But I'm like the anime like lone swordsman, right? Like I've gone off into like the wilderness to like live by myself in isolation or something like that. And there's always like that very fake sort of like dream that you have that like one day you'll return, right? It'll be like returning to like fight the battle that you're needed for. And so, you know, all joking aside, it's not that I'm like completely opposed to ever coming and working in the movement again, but it'll take some time. And there would be a lot more things to consider moving forward. I mean, hindsight's also 2020 though. I feel like I definitely wouldn't make the same mistakes that I did. Yeah. And if you transported me back 2 years ago with the knowledge that I had right now, I think I could have pulled out a win.
I mean, why don't we go through some of that stuff? What are some of the things you learned, and what are some of the things maybe you do differently? And I don't, you know, not in a regret sort of way, but just
Well, so for me personally, I need need to be a little bit better about behind the scenes, having more patience when I talk to people, especially when you get deep into a fight, right? I think we've talked a little bit before about how frustrating it can be to talk to, would essentially be like other members, and then just have to answer the same question.
I'm trying to make your life
Yeah,
better.
have to answer the same question like 65 times, like getting phone calls, like hour-long phone calls, like explaining the same thing, right, over and over and over again, and then having everybody question every single decision that you've ever made over and over and over again.
That sounds like my job.
Dude, yeah. It's like at some point, and I will, give myself a little bit of credit in that I never like completely snapped, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely probably handled some conversations poorly that in hindsight I probably should have been a little bit nicer about. Now, do I think that was like a direct cause of us losing? No, but it's something to like keep in mind if I ever go back into this is, being calm and understanding that everybody's scared and there's a lot of stress, and that's where all this comes from. So that's definitely one of them is just sort of how I speak to people. I think the other thing is that I know now more about what companies can and can't do, right? Because, when you're starting this with zero knowledge from ground zero, you have to constantly like figure it out. You got to figure out like, are they allowed to do this? And you got to like do the research, ask, and all that kind of stuff. Well, what's the repercussion for this? Well, how do they do that? And then there are like specific moments, at least in our fight, where I can tell things got progressively worse. Like my mom got sick for like a period of time where I wasn't there, and I can directly link back to that caused. Then the company moved in, and all of a sudden there was like a big rift, and there was a lot of fracturing within relationships and stuff. Yeah. And obviously, like my mom's doing really well now, so hindsight's 20/20. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't have checked out for that month. I'd been like, she's gonna be fine, as stressful as this is, and I would have stayed. But you can't. You can't do that. So it's that kind of stuff, or also being able to share more of the leadership, right? Like it didn't need to be. It was bad with it being mostly all on my shoulders, or split between Aaron and I, because like I said, if one of us was out, then you lose like a huge part of your driving force. Yeah. And so trying to get, identify other people that could have taken on a leadership role and been more involved would have been really nice. That was really, really difficult with us. I was working with essentially kids, and like 10 years ago for me, 15 years ago for me, I wouldn't have wanted to be involved in any of this, right? I would have been super lazy and just been like, I'll be there, but don't ask me for help. and that's kind of like how everybody was, right? But that, like, moving forward, if I were to organize again, it's like you have to, it can't just be on one person's shoulders. You can't just have like one person that is like the end all be all for like the thought process, the hive mind, right? You need to identify like potential leaders in the group, and you guys need to collectively be working together on this. And the high tide raises all boats, right? So everybody needs to sort of be involved. And so that kind of stuff where it's like, did I do the best with what I had at the time and make probably the right decision? Yeah, but in hindsight, that could have been handled a little bit better. And in moving forward, that kind of stuff I would have handled a lot better. I also think that I would be, so here's a negative. So this is where I would worry about taking on another job. I would be a lot more vocal now. Like at the bargaining table and like different things, because there was an element for a very long time of like, I wasn't sure what the dynamic was. I wasn't sure who was allowed to speak or wasn't allowed to speak or whatever the situation was. I have been screamed at by a high profile $1 million lawyer for hours across the table. There is no dynamic. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't get me wrong. Like there is like at the Teamsters table, I'm sure that there's like completely elite, but in regards to,
you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Negotiations get very heated. I've been involved in a few of them. Negotiations get very heated. A lot of words are said. Yeah. A lot of screaming, yelling happens. It's definitely, it's not a very professional place. Let's say that.
Well, I guess that's my point, is that like once you realize that at some point all professionalism is going to break down on both sides, probably. I never yelled, I never screamed, I never would yell or never scream. But there were plenty of times where it would have been better if I had made the argument over our lawyer, because of the fact that I just had the knowledge needed to like make that argument. And I kept quiet out of respect, right? Out of respect for our own lawyer and just the dynamic of the situation, I tried to keep quiet. Now, towards the last few months, I was very vocal. But you know, in those meetings were a lot more like the company reared their ugly head a lot more in those meetings, right? Yeah. And so I could have taken away any meeting now that anybody looked back on and was like, oh, that was like a pretty good meeting. We like made some progress. We really didn't. They were just nice that day. Yeah. And I could have totally like derailed that one. And you know, I could have kept them basically stepping on their own foot over and over again of like showing what their true colors were. Yeah, yeah. And that would have, I think, led to, there wouldn't be these peaks and valleys of, oh, they're not that bad. Oh, they're really bad. Oh, they're not that bad. You know, or whatever the situation is. It would have just been consistent across the board. They suck. And so that could have been a strategy from our side, from the labor side, is to always, at least in my mind, is to try to find ways to keep the focus on how bad the company is, right? Because if you let it in that they're not that bad, or if you let it in that like, oh, like I know Bill or whoever it is from, you know, and he's been a company man for a long time and they treat him really well or whatever. If you start to let that seep in, then it starts to infect everything that you're doing, right? And I hate to say it this way because things are not black and white. Everything lives in gray, right? And there is nuance and there is some aspects of things that companies do that are not bad, right? But in order to win these fights, at least right now where we're at, you have to draw a hard line in the sand and you can't let your mind wander at all. Because then that's what, like, I got accused, how many times I've been accused of keeping secrets from people. You know, if I had $1 every single time, I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like Aaron used to say that like people think that we're steering the train, but we're really not. We're out in front of the train, just laying out train tracks and hoping that this is not the one that crashes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Until it all kind of finally crashed. And that's how it felt for the longest time, is that we had no idea what was going on you knew exactly what I knew. Right. And so the company can come in and start to like infect, you know, like divisions within people and make it seem like there's secrets and make it seem like, oh, we're really not that bad and all that kind of stuff. And I think I'm much more better equipped now to handle that kind of stuff.
Now, do you know if they brought in union busters? Like
they did in New Jersey. They brought in an official one in New Jersey. They got absolutely torn to shreds because you can't bring in somebody at a niche job like this that has no idea what the job is and then expect them to convince a bunch of assholes that, you know, this is the better way. I mean, because that was the first major mistake that they made, right? Is they tried to attack it from like what you would say would be like the standard union busting playbook is bringing in this guy and all that kind of stuff.
But I mean, even consultants, not maybe union busters on the floor, but consultants, because it sounds like a lot of these tactics are tactics that companies use. UPS employs them all the time. They try to turn us against each other. Yeah. One of the biggest things we fight is, you know, you work with these people every day. They might be your supervisors. They might be, you know, cool, whatever. They might be a nice person. Yeah. At the end of the day, they're part of a bigger organization that is definitely out for their profits, not to better your life.
Right.
So we try to instill that in our members, and it doesn't, like you said, everything lives in gray. I get it. You know, we don't get to everybody. There are definitely some, and like the ones that you said got raises, got bigger raises, right? I mean, do you think some of those people might have been coached and, you know?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, because, you know, for example, like the harassment from my we'll just call her my wife.
Yeah.
Easiest thing to do right now. The harassment from my wife is, I mean, that was not perpetrated by like anybody in management. We know that, right? But you can't tell me, like, nobody cares enough about this to actually want to attack somebody else over it unless you're being put up to it. Yeah. You know, and I just firmly believe that. I like firmly believe that nobody really cares that much that they would go after somebody like repeatedly and harass the absolute fuck out of their family to try to get them to quit, unless you're being put up to it. Like, and that anybody that thinks that this person that was doing this was just doing it because of who he is, you're wrong, and I think that just is a fundamental lack of understanding about how the company works and how the playbook works, right? So there's no doubt that people were being leaned on, right? And then people were being influenced and told to do certain things and to hit certain weak points. I mean, I have access to a recording. It's like an hour and 45-minute long meeting or something like that. And the union buster that they hired is sitting down with management, and he's going through a list of every single person that works in California.
Really?
And showing it's like, is he a company guy? Is he a union guy? Is he in the middle?
Wow.
What would you need? What are the pressure points for this? Most people get 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I got 30 or 40 or something like that. I mean, I got an entire, like a huge amount of time in the course of that meeting was dedicated to just me, and the different ways that you can like apply pressure, the different ways that I could get, this is when I was working, the different ways that you can discipline me without disciplining me. You know what I'm saying? That kind of stuff.
Give him the shitty horse.
Exactly. And so, that was really early on. That was one of the first recordings that I got. I was still working. We were still unionizing, all that kind of stuff. Right. So if that was happening then, you don't think it wasn't happening for a year and a half afterwards? Yeah. And got worse, I'm sure, in a lot of aspects. I mean, it does make me, this is like a total like joke, but somewhat serious, is that one part of the one thing that I'm personally, selfishly, like weirdly happy about is that everybody in medieval times knows who I am. I mean, like, there is not a single fucking person that works. Dude. Yeah, there's a single person that works at that company that does not know who I am. And I am like infamous at that place. You know, I mean, there's probably a lot of people that fucking hate me. I don't care. But like, you know who I am.
Comes with the territory.
Yeah. It's like the Jack Sparrow. It's like, but you have heard of me. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like, that's like totally how I feel right now. Like, so it's some sort of weird, sort of like self-centered, performative, like needing, because, we're actors, we need to be in front of people and stuff. So some sort of weird, like, self-centered way, I'm like, yeah. I definitely like shook the tree. But yeah, I think that there was a lot of people that got leaned on. I think that they'll regret their decision at some point. They may not ever admit it, even to themselves. But I think at some point you have to acknowledge. The guy that's in the hospital right now there's a guy in the hospital right now that's going to be having eye surgery.
Really?
Like, I'm talking like within days after Agva backing out, like some sword shard tip like went back into his eye, and he's gonna have to have surgery. He's gonna be out for a while. And like, selfishly, I'm like, I hope you lose your fucking eye. You know what I'm saying? Like I hope that every single time you look in the mirror, you think, I could probably see if I had a union. And then like, but he's not going to. He's not smart enough to make that connection. But there's going to be a time when you're going to be really, really, really fucking hurt, Or like, perfect example, I don't know, I really don't know how bad this injury is or whatnot, but, if he does lose some visual impairment, he may not be able to work anymore, right? And so it could be one of the people that, like, they propped up as like, yeah, we'll totally take care of you, blah, 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 blah. Oh, you don't have an eye anymore?
Sorry. Can't use you.
And so, like, when you're mad about that, if that happens, I don't know if that would happen or not, but when that happens, or if it happens, when you're really upset with the company about that, I think that there's going to be some part of you that's like, I made the wrong decision. You'll never admit it. You'll never admit it to anybody, right? There's going to be some part of you that made that realizes that you were wrong.
Like you said, who knows if he'll ever put the, two and two together.
Yeah. I have to hope, right?
That's
Dare to dream.
wild.
Dare to dream, dude. Yeah. Dare to dream. Dare to dream that somebody somewhere realizes that they were wrong.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? He shows up to a meeting with an eye patch. He's like, I think we fucked up, guys.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, I'm still being sued, right? I'm still in the middle of my defamation lawsuit with the company.
Really?
Yeah. So like, the stuff for the horses hasn't gotten any better. Nothing's changed. Nothing's even been talked about.
Is that why specifically that they're coming after you, because of the comments made about the horses, or?
Probably. I mean, I think they came after me because they saw me as like the sort of glue that was holding everything together. If they could break the glue, then it would fracture. And in some aspects that worked, right? But I mean, the defamation thing supposedly is not coming from the company, even though anybody with, again, more than a single brain cell would understand that it's coming directly from the company. But yeah, they're trying to shut down this whole thing about animal abuse, which, I mean, they have effectively...
Bad PR makes them look bad.
Yeah, but they have effectively shut it down. I mean, nobody cared. Like, that's the funniest part. This is the other part of the problem that I have, is that I talk to you guys, or not you guys, because you guys know more about what's going on, but like, X, Y, Z person, and I'm like, the horses are being abused. Well, did you talk to PETA? Well, did you talk to this organization? Yes. Nobody helped. I don't know how to explain to you that nobody helped when they needed to help. And so because of that, nothing will change. Everything will stay the exact same. If you go to medieval times right now, you are seeing abused animals.
So
and I hate to say it that way because I hate that I can't ever go there again, right? Because it is a fun place to go, right? But if you go right now, you're seeing abused animals.
So, and it's a question just in hindsight. Do you think that would be better used as a tool, meaning to bring light to the situation, to bring some negative exposure to the company rather than to hitch that to your sled?
Yes. Yeah. I think it might have been better to like maybe not say anything.
I'm not saying not say anything, in my opinion, and it's just me thinking, right? When I'm at a negotiating table, I'm trying to better the people's lives. Now, at the end of the day, completely understand what they're doing is horrible. I would say, hey, why don't we use this as a tool to bring some negative light, some exposure to the company?
Well, we did. It just didn't work, right? So like that's the thing is that, I mean, that's primarily where the source of my defamation lawsuit's coming from, is because I was so public about all these bad things that are happening. And the thing is that with our job, it's not like the horse health and safety is directly tied into the performer health and safety. You know, it's so crisscross and meshed together that like you can't really do one without the other. If you want to make the place safer, you have to take better care of the animals and put them into a safer and more calming environment.
I didn't think about that, but I guess technically for us, it's like the equipment we use.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. Except that my equipment has a mind of its own, right?
Yeah.
And it's a 1,200 or 1,500 pound animal that's abused will act irrationally. Yeah. And like there's going to always be an element of you're working with live animals, so there's going to be problems, right? Like you just take that on, and that's like totally part of the job. I broke my back, right? Like it happens. It's not like I don't actually blame the company for me getting injured. Yeah. You know, like freak accidents like that happen. However, you can mitigate the amount of times that happens, right? By providing the safest environment that you can possibly be in. And that's what they're not doing. So that's the crux of the argument. And maybe this is why, to your point, maybe I framed it wrong when I was trying to explain it, or when I was trying to do a PR campaign about it, is that I focus way too much on like, we want to take care of the animals. And we do, because that was very true. Because that was very much as like, this is just pure emotion. This is my horse. I want him to be taken care of. And therefore I'm just hitting it hard on, he's not being taken care of. You need to help me take care of him. As opposed to like the argument being, you need to understand that I work with, he's like my coworker, right? And so, we can't operate in a safe environment without him being taken care of. And that's
his performance or his health directly affects mine.
Exactly. And the argument should have been like, the company is not doing enough to ensure that the accidents happen rarely. You know what I'm saying? They need to do more to make sure that they mitigate as many potential disasters as possible. And they're not. They don't really care, right, at all about that. Because again, if you get hurt, workers' comp will deal with it, and then you'll never work with us again, and nobody gives a fuck, even though you could be like permanently injured. And so, maybe there was some messaging issues that I had early on with that kind of stuff. But I just don't think that, and again, this is what I was talking about before, where maybe we cast too wide of a net, right? Maybe we should just focus on one thing instead of everything. But things are so bad, right? Yeah. Like you can't just pay me more. That doesn't make the job better, right? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? If you pay me what I asked for, which is still not enough, and I go in the next day and I get paralyzed or something like that, it wasn't worth it. I don't know. We got too, I think, maybe lost in the sauce on envisioning what the place could be, and trying to reach that goal. And then I think we just ended up stumbling and falling over everything.
You just need to fine-tune it more, grab a couple of things, organize a contract, and then start tacking more things.
I think
it's a struggle that we deal with in negotiations because you're not alone in this. Everybody wants everything to be fixed right now. Everybody does. It's something that we've had to deal with through negotiations, even through getting contracts ratified where, well, this isn't fixed. What are we doing about this? And it's like some of these things need to be done incrementally. It's part of the game.
Right.
It's called negotiations for a reason. Now, I will say I don't think they were bargaining in good faith in not giving you proper counters. Even if it was you cast this wide net, they give you this much. Hey, well, let's meet in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, but I get it. I get wanting everything to be fixed. I do.
Well, and you know, things where, I mean, people are I don't mean to be like, imagine it like a war zone, but I mean, people are getting hurt every day, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's like you're trying to like solve their issues like happening like right now, like bad ones, and it's like you're trying to fix them. And the thing is that it's not that hard of a fix, you know? And that's, I think, and you guys have, I'm sure, experienced this before, where it's like, this is not that fucking hard, right? All you have, like, it just makes one person being like that, yeah, that's fine, and then the issue's solved.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this is where I struggle with, one of the things that I struggle with, not just the soul one, but one of the things I struggle with about getting involved again is our own people, right? I mean, our own people are a huge fucking part of the problem. And I say this with love, I really do. But, you know, it's not only the lack of education, but also the unwillingness to do what needs to be done, right? You can't, the way that our system is set up right now, you can't just agree with one side and then just kind of like skate by. You have to like be willing to put everything on the line for it. Yeah. And I get that you know, I mean, one of the first things I said when I got in is that like, I'm doing fine right now, right? Like my partner and I are doing great, and not everybody's in that position, right? You know, the people that are living paycheck to paycheck, which I was for a very long time until recently, but you know, people that are living paycheck to paycheck, people that have kids, people that have houses, mortgages, all that kind of stuff, putting all of that on the line is like a tough ask. That's like a really difficult ask, right? But that would be how you win. You know, I mean, if every single Teamster was united and had like all of you guys had the exact same thought process about what to do, I mean, overnight you'd have everything you wanted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's just not
realistic.
That's not realistic. That's just not. People are different. People want different things. People are at different points in their life. People like me were willing to throw away everything, you know, and never work for that company again to make changes, right? And then other people weren't. And I think that's just part of the problem, you know. I mean, and then that's not even, it doesn't even end with just like the labor movement, right? Like this is an election year, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are like, I don't understand how we have either of these candidates, right? Right. That's like a big part of the discourse. Not that I'm going to get into a political discussion, but a lot of people will complain that like, why are these our options?
Yeah.
Well, these are our options because people have been complacent and people don't get involved and people don't vote and people don't vote at like the small election level, right? You know what I'm saying? Like people don't get informed or educated. You know, you don't vote in your local elections. You don't vote in your state elections. Some of you don't vote in your presidential elections, all that kind of stuff. And then you want to know why we are in the situation that we're in. Things could change overnight if everybody collectively were like, we're done with this shit, you know, fix it. Yeah. And that like, all of these people, that's what's so fucking funny about this whole thing is that the world is run by people that have a lot of money, right? Yeah. By unbelievably wealthy, by the top 1%, whatever conspiracy theory you want to throw out there, that's like the top 1%. You know? Well, that's not a conspiracy theory, but
like,
that's pretty real.
That one's 100% accurate. But
5%.
Yeah. Well, like
0.0005%.
I mean more like if you want to think that like it's like the Illuminati or whatever, that's fine. But the top 1% of people basically run everything, you know. Yeah. But they don't have anything without us. And when you realize that simple fact, it really is not that hard. Everybody just has to collectively agree for like a small period of time. If I could just get everybody to agree for like 48 hours or on one issue. Yeah. And for like 48 hours, I just need everybody to agree on one thing and that issue is solved, right? And then for another 48 hours, agree on one thing and that issue is solved. And that's like, we have so much power, but we've been beat down so much and convinced that we A, don't have any power, or that B, that I should be mad at the person next to me for some reason. And that's the part that's one of the things too that sets me off. I know I keep saying like that's the part. I keep coming up with new things that keep setting me off. But like that one also I struggle with too, where it's like, dude, we're both fucking broke. Why are we arguing? You know what I'm saying? I hate that shit so much where it's like,
we're both broke. That guy's still making money off of us. Why can't we just come to an agreement?
But they won't. But people will fight tooth and nail. I mean, the amount of time, like I fought with other people that were being abused at medieval times. I was like, dude, you're being abused at medieval times. Yeah. what the fuck? And they'd be like, I know, but the company can fix it. It's like, what? Really?
Why?
Like,
Why?
what?
But the real question is, why would they fix it if they can get out of you what they've been getting? Why would they fix it?
It's not logical, right? It's not logical. And I have to when you take a step back, you take like a meta look at it for a second, you're like, I have to applaud the people that set this system up because they don't have to fight us at all. They just they threw some scraps and we're like, yeah, you guys should fight each other. And we've been doing it for so long now that we can't get out of it. It's like, I mean, and you're going to see it you're going to see it on a countrywide scale coming into November this year. Right? Oh, yeah. Outside of the labor movement, you're going to see people just fucking go after each other. And I'm talking not like, oh, I disagree with you. I mean, there's going to be fights. There's going to be people threatening to kill each other, all this kind of stuff. And the sad part of it is that both of you are right and both of you are wrong in different things, right? But in order for anything to change, you both need to get along. Yeah. And that's just never going to happen. I mean,
find some common ground.
Dude, it's yeah, you think it's bad in labor. I mean, and it is bad. But then you look at everything else, not just labor, but you look at politics for the way that the country's run. Or you look at the way that other countries are run, right? And some of the bad things that are happening there. And you're like, well, it's not just us. You think it's like, oh, this is really bad. Labor is really bad. If only we could fix labor. It's like, no, it's really everything is kind of sucks right now. We were talking about plane ticket prices. Yeah. Before and how
inflation period.
Fucking absurd it is to try to I have to try to go to a wedding in June and it's going to cost me thousands of dollars, and so everything's really kind of bad right now. And I don't know, I've spoken to some people before, some older mentors, and they've been like, well, everybody thinks that of when they're in the thick of it, right? 50 years ago, everybody was like, oh shit's really bad right now, And so there's some element of well, are we just going through a phase, or is this really is this the moment? Are we kind of building up to that implosion moment where things are finally going to either, it's things are either going to snap and change for the better, or things are going to snap and we're going to get way worse. And I don't know if we're there yet. I don't know if we're building up to that. It feels like it, right? But it, like I said, you talk to somebody from the older generation and they said the same thing from 50 years ago. So I don't know. All I know is that it's hard to kind of survive right now.
Yeah, I tend to believe that everything's cyclical. It goes around, it comes around, and sometimes it's bad, sometimes
and
it's
history
good.
does repeat itself, right? Look at when production became a big deal.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Now we talk about it all the time on this show, but automation is becoming a huge thing. AI replacing jobs and things that people laborers would do. Yeah. We're coming to that point now where all that stuff, the whole country's changing at a drastic rate, and we're losing positions that were basically done by people, and now they're being automated, and companies are like, oh, we're making all this profit, right? Why would we stick to the old business model of having a guy do it who needs to have, a salary, pension, health benefits, all this stuff, when a computer can do all for us?
Buy some oil in the computer.
Exactly.
Well, all this doom and gloom, Jake. All this doom and gloom. But
every time you have me on,
I will say, I'll ask what, if any, positives, and I'll give you mine. But what, if any, positives do you feel have come out of this situation?
Well, look, I mean, there's at least 30 some odd people that are much more educated now, than they ever have been, and I hope that they take that into their future jobs and stuff like that. I spoke at the OCLF at the last delegates meeting and told them about us kind of the fight being over and stuff. And somebody asked me if I had any advice, right? And the only advice that I have, and this is the one I'll stick by, is that everybody just needs to stop fighting each other so much, right? You just stop arguing with the person next to you so much, and if you can stop doing that, if you can make that one small step forward where you can find some common ground on stuff, I promise you things will get better. I promise you things can get better, right? But it just takes and this is this isn't for me too. It's you just got to set your pride aside for saying I'm very prideful and I have a hard time letting things go. So I get it. Right? Yeah. Not that anybody's figured that out about me. Yeah. Yeah. If I can do it, if I can set my pride aside for a second and find common ground with some people, than anybody. I think anybody can. I think just stop fighting with each other, and I think we have a chance. We have a chance. If I'm right, if I'm right, and you said it's cyclical, but if I'm right, and we're coming to like a head here where things are going to change, or where things are going to kind of like explode. I do think that is a really, really, really good opportunity for things to change for the better, right? If we can kind of hit that ground bottom and then bounce back up, we'll be stronger and better than we ever have been. It's just like as much as I was doom and gloom for this entire time that we've been talking, it is doom and gloom as it is sometimes right now. You have to hold out hope that you can bounce back, right? And if you lose the hope that you can bounce back, then there's nothing. But that's what you really got to hope for, is that things will get better. You know what I'm saying? Things at some point everybody's going to stop getting shit on, and then you're going to have more allies, and then things will sort of progressively get better and better and better. So those are my positives, is that there is hope. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
I agree. I think one of the number one things, like you said, is the education.
It's big.
People now see what's going on. Some of the light you've brought to medieval times, some of the things that need to be discussed, your documentary. Looking forward to it. The movement in a whole goes and licks their wounds. We lost the battle, I understand. But I would say to the people out there in medieval times, it's not over. Don't give up. Even the ones that may not have been with you, they saw how hard you fought, and at the end of the day, you put it all on the line for them. Whether they think so or not, that's what happened.
I think you won a small battle there too, because you said yourself right now, there's 30 people that you educated that now that transition's going to be with them for the rest of their life. They're
True.
more educated now, so they're
Yeah. They may be very upset with how they got the education, but they definitely got it.
Sure.
Well, any closing statements? Any thoughts?
No, not really. I mean, I flip-flopped back and forth about whether or not I would encourage anybody to do what I did. And if you had talked to me a month ago, I'd have been like, no, don't do it. But now that I've calmed down a little bit more and the wound is not as fresh, I think that everybody should do it at least once, right? It's that sounds really bad because it's like riding a roller coaster, right? But it's if you have the opportunity to try to, and it doesn't have to be unionizing. If you have the opportunity to, for once, not talk about how things could be different and actually try to affect change in some form or fashion, it doesn't have to be a 2-year-long brutal union fight, but in some way, try at least one time. At least try one time to step out and be bold and make some changes. For the people that are listening to this, that might be even getting more involved. Than you normally are, right? And it baby steps. You don't have to jump full in like I did. You don't
have to go Jake the Knight on.
Yeah. Not everybody's built to go I'm 0 or 100. There is no there's no ramp up. It's 0 or 100. And so even though I'm at 0 right now, I'm just chilling. I don't want to discourage anybody from attempting to incrementally get more involved in stuff. And again, you don't have to be crazy. You don't have to be in charge of everything. You don't have to spend 2 years fighting it, all that kind of stuff. Just put your money where your mouth is one time, right? Yeah. And then see, because if you can do that one time, I think you'll see how stressful it is from all sides. And I think that could really, really, really help to start making people relax a little bit and just, everything's okay. We can come together. We can do this. It'll be all right.
Well, I will say, from somebody who's taken some losses for sure, I know you'll get back to it. I know that fire you'll be 100 before you know it.
Probably.
So, I don't know, George.
I don't really have anything else.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in every week. We appreciate it. Glad to have you on, Jake. Thank you for spending your time with us.
Thank you for having me back. I really appreciate it. Thank you for letting me dominate this whole space here.
We'll definitely have you on again. Maybe you can update us on where you're at, what you're doing.
So hopefully something way more fun. If you want something totally maybe something not even labor related, I can come in.
Well, I'm hoping that we get a return visit when your documentary comes out for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, unless it's bad. If it's bad, I'm not showing my face. I will not leave my apartment. Yeah, I don't think it will be, but if it is, yeah.
Well, we're gonna find it and we're gonna spread it, Jake. So We appreciate you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you. Please follow us on Instagram, ocst.952.
You can email us at ocst.000@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns. Maybe if you want to get in contact with Jake or anyone else, just hit us up.
See you next week.
See you next week.